Welcome, everyone, to the Apex Sunday podcast, where myself, Robert Ross, and my co host, John Dowsett, talk about Formula One and MotoGP races and events and features. And today we're talking about the 2022 Monaco Grand Prix. And, John, before we get to the race, have you heard about Monaco being in danger of being eliminated? And I know you've probably heard this every year to an extent, like it's not a suitable track for modern F1 cars. And to an extent, I'm starting to agree. Like the current cars are so heavy, there must be a different kind of experience around Monaco. But apparently, the fee for Monaco is very low, and Liberty are not happy with the low fee, and they want it higher. And they might just get rid of the race or make it every off year, sort of alternate years. What are your thoughts on?
They can't do that.
Monaco?
They can't do that. They can't do that. No, they can't do that. I mean, yeah, they can do that, and maybe they will. But this is the first of me hearing of it, and it's got me very upset. That's just not right. I've said before, I wait for Monaco. By the time we get to Monaco, I'm already a little bit bored of what's going on because it's too predictable. And then I see Monaco, and even if it's just a procession, to watch those guys hammer around that circuit is worth every penny. It brings me right back in. And even with the race as boring as it can be, it's Monaco. And they can't get rid of it.
The drivers have said the same thing, like that the normal persons and the people running the sport can't understand what it's like to drive that circuit. And they love driving it. It's such a challenge.
Yeah.
So, the cars being heavy, that's just an unfortunate sort of side effect of the new technology and so forth. So,
come on. I mean, let's go back and look at the cars that they've been running there for decades and decades and decades. They aren't any harder than the cars of the 1960s. They're way easier than the cars of the 1960s or the 1950s. What they're hammering around the track with now, I mean, if they're complaining about it, then give it a rest.
I think it's just in contrast to like when they first got into the sport. Like Lewis said, you can't believe how heavy these cars are compared to the first time he drove Monaco. But, that's the way it goes and probably continue that way. So you're a big fan of Monaco because of the driving challenge, basically, and seeing them tackle that.
It's not just that. It's the tradition. I mean, the tradition of it is huge. Right. And let's look who's won that circuit the most, and the drivers that have won it multiple times, and they're all great drivers. There isn't a weak one in it.
Schumacher and Hill, they have like Senna's got 6, Schumacher's got 5, Hill's got 3 or something.
I think Hill has 5 as well.
Oh, Hill has 5 as well.
Yeah, but it's just too big of a race. Mm-hmm. I got asked just moments ago about Monaco. And I said, I'd never want to drive that track. Right. Not my kind of track. I mean, I like high speed corners, low speed corners, and undulation. Right. And then I started thinking about it. And I thought, I don't know. I mean, maybe if I drove it, I'd think differently.
Yeah, it's interesting. In the video games, the simulations, if you want to call them that, Monaco, for me, when you drive it, if the setup is correct, it's beautiful. If the setup is wrong, it's terrible. It's just awful.
You can't do a proper setup for it. I've driven it in games as well.
I suspect that's true, like of any circuit, if you don't have the proper setup, but it's probably amplified more at Monaco, right?
Because you need massive downforce, right?
Yeah.
Anyway. Yeah, no,
all right.
Don't get rid of it.
Let's move on to qualifying then. In regards to qualifying, Monaco is traditionally, for me at least, qualifying is usually the highlight of the weekend because you get to see the cars at full speed. navigating that very tight circuit and very tight to the wall and so forth, the tires and so forth. So, but Alfa Romeo wasn't that great. There were articles saying that they look good in this type of circuit, but they're okay, but they didn't do too well. And then we had that spin of Perez, and then Sainz seeing the yellow flag too late, so he sort of had a little bit of a crash there. And it was similar to last season in that at the end, no one could challenge Charles for pole because of the spin and so forth. What are your thoughts on qualifying?
I agree fully. Qualifying is all about Monaco, and I think we've said that in the past in previous seasons where the race is kind of an afterthought, and qualifying is just an amazing event. And who's willing to push it to the very edge? What it did for me was it just showed who had speed and who didn't, and where the cars sit.
Right.
If you look at the grid, I'm looking at it in front of me here. You've got Ferrari, Red Bull, McLaren, Mercedes, Alpine, Mercedes, Aston Martin, and Alpine. They're all bunched together as per driver. I mean, per team, and I found that very interesting. But other than that, I mean, it was wonderful to watch them beat around the track, wasn't it?
Yeah, and the guy who's done so well at Monaco for years on end, Daniel Ricciardo, not a very good weekend for him.
Horrible weekend for him. Poor guy. I feel for him.
The McLaren is just not for him, I guess, right?
No, but you know what? He might do very well in NASCAR.
Yeah, he likes NASCAR. Who knows where
exactly.
Go.
He'll do well in that. Yeah.
You go to where you're happy and you're successful, right?
Right.
I mean, he's been in Formula One, I think it's since 2009, so it's been quite a while. And there's kind of an ongoing theme this season of the veterans, like the 10 years or over, having a bit more trouble adapting to these new cars than the rookies or the 5 years in Formula One types. So interesting there.
With the exception of a couple. Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely. Okay, so let's move on to the race. For the race, I loved the commentary. What commentary did you have this time?
I had the international.
Right.
So I had Julian and
Sam Collins, Ben Edwards, and Alan McNish for this one.
McNish is amazing.
Yeah. And Ben Edwards was the guy who did the Channel 4 Formula One. And I think he's a much better commentator than Crofty. Like, he gets excited and so forth, but he keeps it sort of like a Murray Walker level of excitement. So it's good to have that.
Where there's excitement, it's due.
Yeah, exactly. Again, Monaco is always the same story almost. We had red flags. We had delays for the rain. We had pit strategies that upset the drivers. Like, I could have won this race kind of thing. We've seen that over and over again at Monaco.
Yeah.
So
it's a long pit stop.
Yeah. And we saw a lot of wobbling. The cars were, again, definitely harder to drive, aren't they? I just love to see them wobbling around. So, but the first question I'm going to ask you is, when you saw half of the Haas car smashed up, was this the second time this year you thought, is Mick Schumacher alive?
Yes.
Yeah, that was, I mean, when you see the accident itself, it looks worse than it actually was, didn't it?
Yes.
But what do you think? Like, you talked about last podcast how these cars are far more snappy when they lose it. They just snap. And that seemed to be the case this weekend when
time and time again. Yes. Happened to Danny. Once it's gone, it's gone. And if you have a margin of error of Monaco, there is no margin.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the red flag, like, do you think I don't understand why they had a rolling start every single time they started the race again. Do you think they're a bit too mindful of safety per se?
Always, yes.
Yeah, because I thought like a standing start, especially the last one for the red flag after the Schumacher accident.
Mm-hmm.
I thought they could have done a standing start for that, but they didn't. So
no. And you know what? When it's rainy like that, I don't have a problem with it. I don't have a problem with them starting the way they did at Monaco. Right. And they're using common sense. I'm not. I'm a traditionalist, so I believe that so if it's dangerous, that's what the sport is. However, when it comes down to rain starts, I mean, they've done it for years where they do rolling rain starts, and that's okay.
Right. Okay. And what did you think of the strategy calls this time with Perez getting ahead of Charles? Because Charles was the class of the field until the pit stops, wasn't he?
Absolutely. The race was won in the pit stops, and I'm not going to give it to anybody in regards to how they screwed up and messed up or they did it right. It's just fluke. It's roll of the dice.
Absolutely.
It's not something where you can look at it and say Red Bull's the best. Look what they did. They gave Perez the win. No.
Yeah, because didn't Danny lose a race because Red Bull a few years ago screwed up his pit stop as well? So
absolutely, it happens. It happens. And if you look at the only way that I can really judge this race, I'm not going to look at it as the winner being Sergio Perez. Yeah. Right. By the books, that's what happened. But I'm looking at fastest laps. That's what I'm going to look at. Right. And we discussed this, and the big thing is for me is seeing Yuki number 2. Right?
Who was number 1 again? Was it Charles?
Lando.
Okay. Right. Because he pitted late and had that soft tires, right? Yeah.
And that's not going to say who is necessarily should be leading the championship, but you can look at it as something that really speaks to the skill that they have in being able to do that around that circuit. So you've got, in order, you've got Lando, Yuki, Fernando Alonso, Sergio Perez, Max Verstappen, Chaz Leclerc, Carlos Sainz, George Russell, then Lewis Hamilton. Right. My God, I mean, it just speaks volumes. Once again, it's bunching those cars, and the only way you can now say this driver is truly phenomenal out of that whole batch, because of the huge differential. There are a couple in there. One would be Yuki, because he just slaughtered his teammate, like just in a huge way. That's pretty phenomenal. That's pretty phenomenal in my mind. Russell, Hamilton are tight, but then you can also look at Alonso, and Alonso, just put it together.
Yeah, I think Tsunoda is definitely has a hell of a lot of potential, so they should definitely take hold of him or keep him. But this brings me to sort of the thing that I thought about through qualifying in the race was Perez is faster than Max this time. What's going to happen in regards to team orders? And so 2 things have happened. One, Perez has been re-signed for 2 more years. So that means Gasly has no place to go in that organization. Tsunoda, maybe he's fine another couple of years at AlphaTauri. We'll see. But also, Jos Verstappen is complaining about Red Bull favoring Perez this race. Thing is, like, there's no way to manipulate the race to get, maybe there was in the pit stops, but again, if you try to manipulate the race that way at Monaco, chances are you'll be burned. So I don't.
That's not even worth addressing. Jos Verstappen is just the mouthpiece who belongs in a cupboard somewhere.
Yeah,
he's not a racer. He doesn't own a team. He doesn't sponsor a team. He needs to just go away and shut his mouth.
Yeah. That's just so absurd. Like, I know it's a tight championship, and they're thinking about. Kind of reminds me of when Ferrari ordered Barrichello aside for Schumacher in Germany years ago, and it was like the 6th race of the season, and everyone's like, "Why are you so paranoid about your chances for the championship?" Because at that time, it was going to be Schumacher, right? There was
Right.
no real competition. This year, there is more competition from Ferrari, at least. So I just found it odd that Yas would do that. Like,
I think it has something to do with Perez in the press, because Perez in the press has said more than once that this is his season and he has a
right,
chance to win the championship.
right. And
And
Christian
that's just,
Horner has even said subsequently that they don't mind who wins the championship in their team.
oh, he's so full of it. There's
I
not a
know,
chance in hell.
I know.
I mean, that's just propaganda bullshit.
In one sense, it makes sense because a Red Bull driver wins, but
Mm-hmm.
it's likely going to be Max. I mean, just because Perez is faster on occasion doesn't mean he's faster throughout the entire season. So,
How does the team get paid? The team gets paid by points.
mm-hmm.
The more points you get, the more money you get.
Yeah,
But it's as simple as that.
mm-hmm.
So yes, as a team owner, I would want both of my drivers being 1-2.
Right. Yeah.
Do I want to win the drivers' championship as well? Absolutely. This year, there's a distinct chance that there could be 4 people fighting for the championship by the end of the year, and there's an offside chance there could be 5,
Mm-hmm.
because I seriously think that Mercedes could pull it together and all of a sudden dominate again. I'm just pulling that out of my ear, so I don't really know, but look at the team and the amount of money they have and the ability they have to change their engineering and work on that.
Yeah, and they are
Even with
working on it.
even with a limited budget.
Mm-hmm.
So that being said, I also want the fire in Perez's belly that I can throw a pot of water on when I need to.
Right.
I want him to be up there so he's number 2.
Yeah.
And in the odd chance that he's going to slaughter Max like he did in this race, I get more money because he finished higher up the field. Right?
Yeah.
So, no, I mean, you can't listen to team owners. There are some that you can.
Yeah. Perez is not paid by Red Bull. I think his sponsors pay for everything.
Absolutely.
So, whereas Red Bull pays Max a lot of money too.
A stupendous amount of money.
Mm-hmm. And that's the key, I think. Like, that's the problem that McLaren has with Daniel, is they're paying him a lot of money and he's being outperformed by Lando, for the 2nd season running. So,
yeah,
the pay, what the drivers get for pay sort of means they're the number 1 driver, I would say. So in this case, there is no number 1 at McLaren officially, but Lando is the number 1 driver because he's earned it. So
yes.
Anything else about this race before we go on to rating it and the driver of the race?
George again, his performance just fantastic. I mean, in what he did against Hamilton. No, I'm not picking a driver of the race. I'm just saying once again, we're talking about number 1, number 2, consistently ahead of Lewis.
Right.
Yeah.
For driver of the race, I'm going to go with Norris. I thought he did really, really well, considering that he's in a McLaren and considering where Daniel is. He finished in the top 10. So I'm going to give it to Norris. What about you, John?
I'd like to give it to Yuki just because of him getting the 2nd fastest lap.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to give it to Norris because he had the fastest lap, but it'd be Perez. I'd give it to Perez just because he pulled it together, and he's been known to be have the Coulthard syndrome of having brain fade, and he didn't have brain fade this time. He held it together, so good for Perez of doing that.
And do you think that a Monaco win will help him mentally to possibly fight against Max?
He's not going to fight against Max. They're not going to give him that opportunity, but I think it'll give him the opportunity to be on the podium a lot more this year.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's move on to rating the race.
I have one question to ask you before we rate the race.
Sure.
What is your take if it had been Perez, Verstappen, and Sainz in third instead of Sainz in second? Do you think that Perez would have been pushed down to second?
Yeah.
So do I.
I mean, it was clear from last race that he's the number 2. I mean, it's been clear the whole time. And so, yeah.
Rating the race. So what's your take on rating the race, Rob?
I'm not a big fan of Monaco usually. I'm just going to give it a 4. I just thought it was too long, too many delays, too many this, that, hours and hours sitting around. It's always the same with this race. So yeah, I'm not a big fan of it. What about you?
I'll give it a 5. If we were rating qualifying, I'd give it a 10. But the race itself, I would rate it at a 5. It was amazing to see the ability of these people to have as few DNFs as there were. Normally, there are a lot more DNFs. What do we have? We had 3: Albon, Schumacher, Magnussen.
Right. Okay, so what's next? It's Azerbaijan, another street circuit. Super, super, super long straightaway. Should be interesting to see how Ferrari and Red Bull do, like the Honda versus the Ferrari engine at this long straightaway, and also the porpoising, because it sort of builds up as you go down the straight, right? So
yeah,
see how it goes.
I think we've been shown that Ferrari will do better at Azerbaijan because they have that long straight, and I think it also becomes evident that what Adrian Newey has built for this year's Red Bull is the car as far as handling goes.
Right.
Yeah,
Adrian Newey cars are usually always good, and put a great engine in it, and you've got a winner. So
yes.
All right, we'll talk to you soon, John. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye.